Hello everyone, and welcome back to the 3T Path channel, and welcome back to our Uddhava-gita course. So now we're coming to the end of this 2-chapter sequence where Krishna was teaching us about the varnashrama system, the varnashrama system. And we've been discussing in this last few classes the last 2 ashrams, vanaprastha and especially sannyasa. And of course, not everything we can apply to our modern day lives, but a lot of concepts we certainly can use for us. And today we'll be starting with a very important concept about the connection between a healthy mind, healthy body, and thus the potential for spiritual life. Now, of course, if you want to watch all the other classes in this Uddhava-gita course, make sure you become a member of the channel, and the instructions are here below in the description of the video. And then you check out Uddhava-gita.com, where we have the whole course nicely organized. Okay, we are in the 11th canto, 18th chapter, verse 32. Krishna says, "The one Supreme Lord is situated within all material bodies and within everyone's soul. Just as the moon is reflected in innumerable reservoirs of water, the Supreme Lord, although one, is present within everyone. Thus the material body is ultimately composed of the energy of the one Supreme Lord." So this is a beautiful image to have. How can God be in everyone? Isn't God one? Wouldn't he have to be just in one place because he is one? So they use this beautiful example of the little reservoirs of water. So you can have, like, imagine like cups or plates, little pots, or even lakes spread out through the countryside. And in all of them, the moon is reflected in the water. So you can have a whole bunch of little cups on a table, for example, and you can see the moon in all of them. But the moon is one. So it's a very nice visual understanding of the presence of God in everything and everyone, though God is one. So that's a very good way to look at it, because it's very important. Krishna says in Bhagavad-gita chapter 6, we have to see him in everyone. So the seeing God in the heart of every person is very important. To have this consciousness where you're going around in everyone, plant, animal, human, and you can see the presence of God there. Krishna says, if you do that, then you're always with me and I'm always with you. Purport. All material bodies are composed of the same material nature, which is ultimately the potency of the one Supreme Lord. Therefore, one cannot justify feelings of hostility toward any living entity. In carrying out the Lord's mission on earth, the bona fide representatives of God never become envious or hostile toward anyone, even when chastised by those who flagrantly violate the laws of God. Every living being is ultimately the Son of God, and God is present within everyone's body. Therefore, saintly persons should be very careful when dealing with the most insignificant person or creature. Verse 33. If at times one does not obtain proper food, one should not be depressed. And when one obtains sumptuous food, one should not rejoice. Being fixed in determination, one should understand both situations to be under the control of God. So this is the sannyasa. Remember, the sannyasa is going around, and even also the vanaprastha, and they're begging for food as one of the practices to humble themselves before society, to remove any sort of ego or pride. They're going around begging for food. Now, of course, if you're begging for food, sometimes you don't get any food, or sometimes you'll get bad food, sometimes you'll get great food. So the practice was, don't worry about it. That's what you're practicing. You're practicing this detachment, this equanimity, this fixed in determination. So you're fixed in the determination, not in the results. Your determination is unchanging. And of course, we use that for our lives. We're fixed in our dharma, in bhakti. We're fixed on purpose, on devotion. The results, is it a good day? Is it a bad day? Are people nice to me? Are people not nice to me? Do I get good news? Do I get bad news? Do I get profit? Do I get loss? Those are all dualities of the material world. We're not concerned with that. We're fixed in our determination to continue in our path of dharma and bhakti, doing everything as an offering to Krishna. Purport. Because we desire to enjoy the material body, the varieties of material experience bring us flickering happiness and inevitable suffering. We foolishly consider ourselves to be controllers and doers, and thus through false egotism we are subjected to the volatile feelings of the material body and mind. So the whole thing about controllers and doers, ownership and doers. So we want to go beyond the concept of mine and the concept of me. Like I'm doing things and these things belong to me. These are mundane concepts we try to overcome in yoga. We understand that actually everything belongs to God, and everything that happens is going on by the laws of material nature. Not by my effort alone. I'm not responsible for things out here. I am not the controller of the gunas. The gunas belong to God. And there's an organization of this energy, which is called the law of karma, God's will. And so these things, the results are beyond me. What is mine is the effort. Krishna says, you have the right to do the work, but not the results, Krishna says in Bhagavad-gita. Very difficult verse to understand. But once you get it, everything becomes very clear. You have effort. That's yours. You can try. You can focus. You can decide if you do the right thing or the wrong thing. You can decide if you're going to do it well, if you can do it poorly. That's up to you. But the result, not up to you. You can do it really nicely, full intent, and have a terrible result. That's just the way life is. You see lots of very intelligent people, hardworking, intelligent, honest people, and they have a hard life. Things don't work out. And then you see horrible, just like disgusting, lazy people, just disgusting morals, and they're doing really well. Because it's just their karma manifesting at that time. So you never worry about the result, only your effort. That's what you're focusing on. Verse 34, if required, one should endeavor to get sufficient foodstuffs, because it is always necessary and proper to maintain one's health. When the senses, mind, and life air, the prana, are fit, one can contemplate spiritual truth, and by understanding truth, one is liberated. This is a very important verse. This verse can definitely be applied to all of us, and I definitely put this in practice and teach about this in my book, The 3T Path. So, of course, you need these were sannyasis, so they were just begging for food. And you say, look, if it gets really bad, for example, if you try to beg for food in most countries today, like it wouldn't work. You would pretty much starve to death. People just wouldn't give it to you. It's not their nature. They don't have it. They'd call the cops on you. You get shot. In America, you'd probably get shot. So it wouldn't work. So if you can't get foodstuffs, make sure you get it, Krishna's saying. Make sure you get it because it's necessary to maintain your health. Very important, maintaining your health. I call, in the 3T path, I'm always emphasizing the importance. We call this the natural dharma. Your natural dharma, Krishna says, is to not eat too much, not eat too little, and you have to have entertainment, not sleep too much, not sleep too little. So your sleep, the way you entertain yourself, the way you work out, maintain health, eat, these things are very important. You have to maximize your material body, it's a wonderful machine. And of course, your body affects your mind. If your body is not doing so well, then your mind doesn't do so. You've had that before when you're stressed and you can't think right, or if you're sick, your mind's all kind of like, cloudy and you can't think straight either. So you want a healthy mind. Of course, the old saying, healthy body, healthy mind. But why do we want that? Because we want a healthy body to have a healthy mind. Why? Because with the healthy mind, we can contemplate jnana, spiritual truth. We want to be able to contemplate spiritual truth. Because once you do that, then you can be fit for liberation. Of course, if you're just taking care of the body and the mind, your mind's nice, your body's nice, and then you're not contemplating spiritual truth, it's a whole waste of time. It's nice, you're still gonna have a nice life, I guess, but it's a waste of time because you're just progressing towards death anyway. And then you're gonna take rebirth and have to try it again. And so you're not going anywhere with it. So we're doing all that so we can get spiritual enlightenment. So it's a key concept of spirituality, of yoga. And Krishna in Patanjali talks about it in the Yoga Sutras as well. He says, these are obstacles. He names the obstacles to yoga, and there are a lot of them are just a bad body, just not lacking health. Krishnamacharya, the father of modern yoga, would say that disease prevents your yogic realization, but it stops your yoga. And that's why he had a whole program to keep very fit, and he emphasized, the asanas and pranayama and all that, so you can have a good spiritual life. So this connection between body, mind, and your spiritual life is there, and it's very important. It's mentioned in many texts. Purport. If foodstuffs do not come automatically or by token begging, then one should endeavor to keep body and soul together so that one's spiritual program will not be disturbed. Normally, those who are endeavoring in spiritual life cannot maintain steady concentration on the truth if their mind and body are weakened by undereating. On the other hand, extravagant consumption of food is a great impediment for spiritual advancement and should be given up. The word aharartam in this verse indicates eating only to keep oneself fit for spiritual advancement and does not justify unnecessary collecting or warehousing of so-called alms. If one collects more than necessary for one's spiritual program, the surplus becomes a heavy weight that drags one down to the material platform. And actually this whole thing of, these days, not my thing, and I don't recommend my students to forget this whole begging and asking for money. Just live your simple life. We have a different society now. Just live your own life, live your dharma, keep things simple and focus, prioritize your spiritual advancement and helping other people spiritually advance. That's the best thing. No institutions, no religious institutions, no begging for alms, none of that thing all the time asking for money and building so I can build a bigger and bigger church. That whole thing has been done to death, and I'm not into it, and I don't recommend you get into it either. Verse 35. A sage should accept the food, clothing, and bedding, be they of excellent or inferior quality, that comes of their own accord. So now, of course, they're still just sleeping anywhere, they're moving around. These were itinerant renunciants, so they would always be moving around. And so where are you going to sleep? You don't know. What kind of clothes you're going to have? You don't know. It's because, that was their practice. And just whatever. It's the whatever yoga we were talking about in the last class. It's whatever happens is fine. So Krishna's saying, look, just don't worry about it. Whatever comes is fine. How do we apply that in our lives? Same thing. Again, it is, you can be hardworking and intelligent and, you have this much income, or you have this much income, or you have this, it's whatever. It depends on your karma, the circumstances. It's not you. It's not like a personal, it's not a grading system or you're like a better person because you're making this much and you're not such a, that's not our philosophy. It's just whatever. So whatever comes on its own accord, just, live like that. If you're living tiny, that's okay, I've got this much budget, that's what I'm going to live with. Just focus on what's really important, on values, on dharma, on bhakti. So for those things, you don't need anything material. You can starve to death and still be prioritizing dharma and bhakti and values. So that's what's important. Everything else, whatever, whatever comes, that comes of their own accord, don't worry about it so much. That's not your priority. You just do your dharma, do your best, and what comes will come. Did I not read the purport? Sometimes excellent, sumptuous food will come without endeavor, and at other times tasteless food appears. A sage should not become happily excited when a sumptuous plate is brought to him, nor should be angrily refuse ordinary food that comes of its own accord. If no food comes at all, as mentioned in the previous verse, one must endeavor to avoid starvation. From these verses, it appears that even a saintly sage must have a good dose of common sense. Verse 36. Just as I, the Supreme Lord, execute regulative duties by my own free will, similarly, one who has realized knowledge of me should maintain general cleanliness, purify his hands with water, take bath, and execute other regulative duties, not by force, but by his own free will. So, there's a good verse in Bhagavad-gita where Krishna basically says, look, you have to do your duties. And you could say, well, I'm a liberated soul, I shouldn't do any duty. Well, then he says, what's your argument for not doing those things? So if you're free, why not do them? You don't have to do them by obligation, but what's the obligation for not doing them? There's no such thing. So just do them anyway. So that's the idea. You just follow your obligations, you do your duties, just do them anyway. Here he says, do it on your own free will. Not because you have to, but because there's no reason not to do that. So just be a good person because you have to just maintain cleanliness, wash it. Not because you have to, but because there's no reason not to. Just do it out of your own free will. Interesting concept. So in the end, no, like, oh, I'm so special, I can do things differently. That's where you want to avoid. No, I'm so special, I can break rules, I can do whatever I want. I don't have to follow any rules or laws because I'm different. No, just do everything normally. And inside, your mind is free, your soul's free, you're fully liberated. But why not follow the rules? Why not stick to the rules? It actually makes sense, especially cleaning your hand, general cleanliness, that kind of taking bath. This was all about cleanliness, just Socham rules. Of course you want to do that anyway. Purport. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead descends to the material world, he generally observes the Vedic regulative duties to set a proper example for mankind. So you can see, of course, Lord Ram is the perfection of it. Lord Ram with his perfect dharma, perfect concept of dharma and everything is so dharmic, wonderful. So it's a wonderful example. That's why he's been, everybody worships Lord Ram and loves that image for so many thousands and millions of years because it's just a beautiful, it's so perfect. Krishna is a little harder because he did behave as himself, as God. So he did things like dancing with the gopis and some people, I can't do that, so I don't like that. But that was different. He was just showing, no, I'm different. I'm actually God as I am, not God as an example. I am God as I am. And so there's actually nothing wrong with these situations because everything everyone is connected to me, everyone belongs to me, everyone is with me. I'm united with everyone, so there's nothing, you can never go wrong with Krishna. But anyway, but Krishna, aside from like these more esoteric leelas, in general, he's doing everything, following all the rules and deciding just to give the example. So he would do the rituals, he would do the thing, he would meditate, he would do everything to give the example. So Krishna says that he does that, he sets the example. He says that in Bhagavad-gita as well. I don't have to do these things, but I do it to set the example, because whatever important, famous people do, others will follow. Unfortunately, in our current age, the rich and powerful, they do horrible things, so then people want to follow that as well. They do stupid things and they show off their wealth, so then people want to do that as well. And they rape and, they mistreat women, so people want to follow that as well. So unfortunately, we have all these bad examples of the rich and famous people. But the idea was like, if you're famous, if you're important, Krishna explains this to Arjuna as well in Bhagavad Gita, look, people are going to follow what you do, Arjuna. So if you run out of the battlefield and you forfeit on your dharma, on your duties, then everybody's going to forfeit on their dharma. Like, why would the person show up to do your garden? Why would the teacher show up to teach? Everybody's going to forfeit their duties, and then what's going to happen with the world? And nobody's doing their duties anymore. So, this is a very important point. The Lord acts by his own free will, since no one can oblige, force, or impel the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Similarly, the jnani or self-realized soul is fixed on a spiritual platform beyond the material body, and should therefore execute the regulative duties in relation to the body by his own free will, and not as a servant of the rules and regulations. Nevertheless, a transcendentalist strictly complies with regular duties for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord. In other words, one who is advanced in loving devotional service to Lord Krishna spontaneously moves according to the will of the Supreme. One who is perfectly situated in spiritual realization cannot become a servant of the material body or of rules and regulations concerning the material body. However, this verse and other similar statements in Vedic scriptures should not be ignorantly misinterpreted to justify immoral, whimsical behavior. Lord Krishna is discussing the Paramahamsa stage of life, and those who are attached to the material body have nothing to do with the Paramahamsa stage, nor should they exploit its unique privilege and status. And we're talking about this because the last class we were talking about the Paramahamsa who didn't follow the rules, who didn't even bathe, was acting like a crazy person. We're talking about Jada Yogi. We were talking about that in previous classes. So like you definitely shouldn't imitate that state if you're not in the Paramahamsa stage already. Verse 37. A realized soul no longer sees anything as separate from me. That's very important. For his realized knowledge of me has destroyed such illusory perceptions. So we have the illusion, it's an illusory perception to think anything is disconnected from Krishna. That is the very definition of Maya, of illusion, given by Lord Narayana himself in the Bhagavad Purana. The very definition of illusion is to think that anything, to see anything or anyone and not perceive the connection to Krishna, to God. That is illusion. If at any moment you're not connecting, you're not seeing how that thing, that person, that situation is connected with God, that's illusion. So everything, of course, all of matter is Krishna's energy. Every soul is Krishna's servant, Son of God. Every soul is connected to God, is a spark of God. Everything is matter, all of matter is God's energy. So if anytime you don't see God, you're not thinking of God, that's illusion. So this realized soul no longer sees anything separate from me, for his realized knowledge of me has destroyed such illusory perception. Since the material body and mind were previously accustomed to this kind of perception, it may sometimes appear to recur. But at the time of death, the self-realized soul achieves opulences equal to mine. So now he's talking about liberation. So as you see, you understand that everything is connected to Krishna. But, he says, because before you were accustomed to this kind of illusion, they may recur. So you're going through the day, and this is going to happen with you. Okay, right now I'm saying this, and you're like, yeah, of course. Everything is Krishna, 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 everything's Krishna. So like, yes, I got it. But then, maybe an hour later, half an hour after you've watched this class, you're like, you forget about it. It's like, it didn't, it just slipped your mind. And you're back with some other concept. And then you're like, oh yeah, no. Krishna, and then you remember that everything's Krishna, and then it slips your mind a bit. That's just the way it is. As you're progressing, it gets better, but we forget, less and less. And then Krishna is saying, but at the time of death, if you're not too messed, if you've progressed enough, at the time of death, the soul achieves, it will work. At the time of death, you'll remember, and then you'll attain liberation. And one of the liberations is described as achieving the opulences equal to mine. This is a kind of liberation. Krishna just wants to share everything. So you just like whatever you want to share with him. It's just love. It's not a competition. Krishna isn't trying to outcompete any little soul. He wants everybody to have as much as him. Purport. Lord Krishna explained in verse 32 of this chapter that all material and spiritual objects are expansions of his potency. By realized knowledge of the Lord, one gives up the illusion that anything, anywhere, at any time can be separate from Lord Krishna. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur describes the self-realized devotee as follows. The devotee of the Lord does not see anything as separate from Lord Krishna and does not consider himself to be a permanent resident of the material world. At every moment, the devotee is moved by his desire to serve Lord Krishna. Just as those who are inclined to sense gratification pass their time making arrangements for their enjoyment, similarly the devotees are busy throughout the day arranging their devotional service to Lord Krishna. Therefore, they have no time to act like materialistic sense enjoyers. To ordinary persons, it may seem that a pure devotee is seeing something as separate from Krishna, but a pure devotee is actually fixed in his status as a liberated soul and is guaranteed to achieve a spiritual body in the kingdom of God. Ordinary materialistic persons cannot always understand the activities of a pure devotee of the Lord, and thus they may try to minimize his position, considering him to be the same as themselves. At the end of life, however, the results achieved by the devotees of the Lord and ordinary materialistic persons are vastly different. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoy that and have your rest of your day with lots of peace and lots of love.